Okay, so part 2 here, I'm just going to read Deuteronomy 4 as a we started talking about Parashah Vav Aleph Tav Het Nun Nun, Va Es Chanan, or Va Et Chanan. So it starts off, it says in verse Deuteronomy 3:23, I implored Yahweh at that time. So you look over, and that's the first word. It says Vav Aleph Tav Het Nun Nun, but yet it's translated, I implored. Well, for all the definition of coquette, dainty, daisy, con, encampment, provision in, a grant of amnesty, a plea for grace and mercy, nowhere did it say it means I implored. So I'm trying to show you that as a prayer or request for favor, that's what it means. So here you have this word, the first word of Deuteronomy 3:23, Vav Aleph Tav Het Nun Nun, and the letter Nun, the last letter is a suffix, means putting it into action, you might say. The Aleph Tav, the Aleph is the prefix letter that means I, or I have, or I am, and then so you have Tav Het Nun, and I could look up in the dictionary spelling the word Tav Het Nun, but the root of it is Het Nun. I'm just trying to show you the mechanism and the frustration of, like Kurt being told by his dad, cut down this tree. It's like, where do I start? Figure it out. How do I do it? What tool do I use? Figure it out. Looking at the 10 Commandments written as tables in stone, and nobody can tell you whether they can or they will. Did they not know Hebrew? Were they just saying, you're a goy, filthy infidel, get out of our store? She didn't say that. She was very kind, the librarian lady. And she spent 3 hours with us trying to look up every possible book she could imagine with a picture of that, and none of them would just tell you what those words were. And she didn't know. She didn't know Hebrew, apparently, nor did the old guy that came to the door. But here, we're just trying to say, you want to know what these words mean? Het Nun is, and if it starts off with the Aleph Tav, it's like I'm begging Yahweh for his compassion, his merciful grace. And it says here then, verse 24, Adonai Yahweh, you have just barely begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. I'm just reading the Stone's Tanakh here. For what power is there in the heaven or on earth that can perform according to your deeds and according to your mighty acts? Moshe is saying, we just beheld the 10 plagues of the Exodus. We just behold and see right in front of our eyes Pharaoh and his elite military forces all get drowned in the same water that you took us over on dry land. We just have witnessed the thunder and the flames on the top of this mountain and your voice speaking from heaven. And we just saw Og and Sihon, these two giants that ruled the land, get taken out by you for us. No other deity has ever done this for any people, and that's what we'll see in Deuteronomy 4. And this is just the beginning of what you've promised us. And now I have to die? Oh, come on. So Moshe says, let me now cross over and see the good land. It's not just see the good land, but let me witness the manifold blossoming of the tree of life, the bird of paradise. Let me see the bird of paradise spread his wings. I might picture a peacock, they're walking around, all of a sudden they put out their tail. And there's other birds that do all kinds of beautiful, butterflies. You can see it camouflage, but all of a sudden it puts out its wings. It's like Pei-Zadi. Moshe knew he had barely begun to witness the kavod Aleph Tav. Come on, just let me. And Yahweh says no. Because the people got Moshe, pushed him past his own personal breaking point. He got ticked off and he hit the rock with his stick instead of speaking to it. I got pushed to that limit the other day. Doggone it. Okay, you just lost your whole, can't go into the land. Oh, come on, please forgive me. Okay, so then we get into chapter 4. So this is Moshe telling, this book of Deuteronomy, as I said, this is like the going away commencement speech. Moshe is about to die and Joshua's taking over. And this is Moshe giving the last words to the people. And then he sets up Deuteronomy 5. But let me just read Deuteronomy 4. And if any of you guys want to jump in, go ahead and say so. If something comes across your mind, tell me and I'll look up. Now, O Israel, listen to the decrees and the ordinances that I teach you to perform so that you may live. Right there's an if-then situation. I'll give some commentary here. What Moshe is saying is that he realizes that the covenant is not grace. It's not just, here's God's grace. It's a deal. It's a teeter-totter. You do something and something's going to happen. Like I talked about that one time, I hit a stick and it broke and came back and cut my face open because of forces, because of mechanical physics that Yahuwah built into the universe. So he gives us decrees and ordinances. And if you look at what that word is het kuf and mem shin pei tet. Het kuf. Well, the word het vav kuf, chok, is a rung on the ladder. So he has given us a list of things to do like rungs on the ladder. And if the ladder's broken, one of the rungs is broken, you might fall and get crippled or die. Like what happened to Moshe. He couldn't go into the land. He crippled himself and he died. And mem shin pei tet. Well, I say mem shin pei tet, and I keep mentioning teeter-totter and scales of balance because that's what shin pei tet means. Pei tet literally means to come to a draw, a stalemate, 0-0 or 20-20. It's perfectly balanced scales. I'll do the job for $500. Okay, here's your $500. You've done the job as I requested. That's mishpat. And if somebody says, here, I'll do the job for 500, and the guy says, I'm only going to give you 4. Why? It doesn't matter why. I want to win. I want to get more than you gave. It's like, that's not mishpat. But the mishpat is that what we put in our scales of mishpat is going to happen to that person. So, and I'm just reiterating stuff we've talked about before, that if you think that to rip somebody off is the way to get ahead, and I remember the story that comes to mind, a guy said his dad would go to the dump and he'd have the dog get out of his car when he goes to the scales. Dog would say weighs 100 pounds. So he'd go to the scales when he's pulling in, he and his dog would get out of the car, weigh the vehicle, and then when he's coming back out of the dump, he has his dog sit in the car. I just ripped off the dump for $100. No, what you just did, yeah, you saved $3.50 from the scales, but what you just did is that you sent out into the universe, it's okay to steal from me in a slick, sneaky way by having inaccurate scales of balance. You just projected that everybody in the world is allowed to rip you off by that manner because you've established that in your kingdom, that's the way it works. That's good. That's the way we do it here. So I just had that happen to me with a fellow for a task I just did for him at his request. I'm gonna shortchange you by $100. That's the third time he's done this. Okay, strike 3, you're out. I'm not gonna do anything for you anymore. But I'm not going to go try to get it because he just has determined for himself that maybe in this life and the life to come, rip him off. That's the way you do business. That's what he's did. That's the scales of balance he's just set up for himself. Yahweh says, pay your workmen. Yahweh says his scales of balance are good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Well, if that's the way Yahweh does business, then if I want to be Yahweh, then I should give good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing, because now I'm playing into Yahuwah's economy. And if I try to say I'm going to shortchange, give bad product, minimal That's not Yahweh's kingdom. Do we not know this? We who say that we are Yahweh's people, like this particular man claims to be, does he not even know Yahweh or the mechanics of his kingdom or his economy? He's trying to be successful in the world economy by going counter and contradicting the economic scales of balance of Yahuwah's kingdom. Why are we talking about this stuff? Because the 10 Commandments are not just a matter of you better not. It's about understanding the scales of balance and the rungs of the ladder in Yahweh's kingdom, in Yahweh's house, in Yahweh's economy, in Yahweh's throne. He says that Mishpat and Tzedakah are the foundation of his throne. The word Mishpat, again, right rulings, balanced scales of equity are the foundation of his throne. And then he gives them to us. So we have to look at the 10 Commandments as his disclosure, him telling us, as it were, the chemistry, him telling us that 2 + 2 = 4, him telling us how the universe is built, the function of, when I say chemistry, it's like electrons and protons. I mean, it took thousands of years before anybody could put them into those words, and whether or not they're accurate. We know that ancient peoples, whoever inhabited this earth, has left behind evidence of technology that's beyond our own even now, as if they knew more stuff than we know now, or at least what our scientists are letting us think we know now. But either way, the universe, the earth is built with incredible potential that we've only tapped into a little bit. And what I'm saying is that on the surface, on the physical and the material, for us to think that we can genetically modify the food, the air, the water, and give injections that'll modify DNA, and to think that we're going to prosper for doing that is insane. Yahuwah built with frequency, with resonance, with essential oils, with good food, with vitamins and minerals and nutrients of things we hear. Whether it's music, whether it's birds, whether it's our voice. And I'm as guilty as anybody for saying the wrong things or thinking the wrong things. Every day is another attempt to get back on track and put it right. What I'm suggesting is that what I see in these words, like this picture, the blossoming of the bird of paradise, the blossoming of what Yahweh wanted to see on the face of this earth, in us, in his people, walking in his ways, enjoying his encampment as daisies blossoming in his meadow, hasn't manifest. It was in the garden. David had a bit of it. Solomon ruined it all through the era of the other ages, after Solomon, before Hezekiah, after Hezekiah, before Yeshua's here. Gosh, it's just been a wasted wasteland of conflagration and annihilation. But I believe I see in these words that we still have this potential right at our threshold, right at the door, if we regard them. Okay, so now, Deuteronomy 4, verse 1. Now, O Israel, listen to and the word Shema is not just listen, but it's also believe it enough to the point that you actually do it. It's not just hear and listen. That I teach you to perform so that you may live. Okay, so we have to hold on to this promise that if we listen, we live. Ezekiel 20 was about that. We talked about that before. It is being taught in Messianic realm places, different congregations, that the Torah is bad laws that we can't live by. I disagree. I believe that the Torah is good laws, good instruction, that if we do it, we will live. 4 times in Ezekiel 20, I believe it is, that Yahweh says, if a man does these things, he will live, but you guys didn't want to hear, you closed your ears, so I gave you bad laws that you can't live by, which is, I believe, laws that are happening now, like up in Canada and the USA and in England and Australia, where we've got bad leaders giving us bad laws nobody can live by, that are ruining the air, the water, the plants, the DNA, and it's all designed to kill us. Thank you very much. But I believe that there's something about looking at Yahweh's words that if you get bit by the viper, yeah, just a serious, real poison gets injected into you from the viper. Just like when Moshe lifted up the Nun Samech, not here, I'm pointing to what I thought I had here last week, but Sally's got the Nun Samech. Pointing to Yeshua being lifted up, he will heal us even from the viper bite. And that's contemplating these words and letters. The orthographic shape is the Samech, the meaning of the letters Nun, the way they all work around it. And there's some sort of this is almost like a picture of the way you always designed the atoms with the electrons at the nucleus, and then the field of electrons is all the letters around Yeshua. There's something about this which is a cosmic dynamic of life. And then you will come and possess the land that Yahweh, the Elohim of your forefathers, gives you. And it hasn't happened yet. He hasn't recalled the lost 12 tribes. So therefore, I can read Deuteronomy 4 as the very real promise that we are standing right at the threshold of. And just like that in inverted double dalet, the triangle above and the thin place, the door dripping down grades of sand like the hourglass, that the same way Moshe standing at the door of the promised land, I believe, is us standing here 2021 at the door of the promises, now that Yahweh has given us back the mind of understanding the words and letters of his covenant and who Yeshua really is and what his Torah really is. So I can have the hope that these words are true, the promises are still active, and that everything he says is for the vitality of my mind and the vitality of my physicality, my body, in spite of what they may. If somebody grabs you, they're doing this in India. They're tackling, people are tackling their neighbors, dropping into the ground and jamming in these toxic poisons under the guise of being an antidote to a virus, which doesn't really exist as a virus. You might learn to look up the words graphene oxide. GRAPHENE OXIDE. Just look up graphene oxide. You'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the point is here, verse 2, you shall not add to the word I command you, nor shall you subtract from it to observe the commandments. Commandments. That word is memzadi vav tav. Whoa, wait a minute. He already gave us het kuf, and now he's giving us memzadi vav tav. Isn't that adding? If you know what the word means, that I command you, to command is zadi vav. So the word Zion is zadi yod, and then the vav nun is the suffix. So what is Zion? Oh, Mount Zion, that's the big mountain, that's the New Jerusalem. It's like, wait a minute, we can mystify and glorify and turn into mythical fables. Do what he said. Oh, that's Zadi. So why does the letter Zadi in the Mishkan pattern line up with the Ark of the Covenant? Because in the Ark of the Covenant, he put the 10 Commandments, which is, this is what he said. And if you do what he said, the Ark of the Covenant also is a picture of the resurrection of Yeshua. Just like the flower, like this bird of paradise, blossoming out from a locked up bud, it's the picture of the Zadi, of the resurrection of Israel coming back as Yahweh's people. And then so when Yahweh says, I've dreamed of this, we should, I can't read that. We should put that back up if you want. Yahweh says, I've dreamed of this day. I will be your Elohim and you're going to be my people. Then we're going to show the world something, by golly. Yeah, that's right. Together. The great warlord Khan, Yahuwah, Zavot, and us, his people, walking in his ways as his graceful daisy. Yeah, then the world's going to see something. Haven't seen it yet. Okay, somebody put up, TS, whoever that was, put up what was that phrase that from Paul? Was that There.
Tim.
I consider that our present sufferings are not comparable to the glory that will be revealed. Oh, it disappeared again.
You got to open up your chat window.
Me?
Yeah, do you know how to do that?
No.
The bottom of the screen is a little circle that says chat. Just click that. Open up.
Oh, there.
He wrote it twice.
Gosh, this is just very confusing. I'm going to turn it off. It'll blow my concentration. Somebody else want to read it?
I consider that our present sufferings are not comparable to the glory that will be revealed in us. The creation waits in eager expectations for the revelation of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to the futility, not by its own will, but because of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God. I consider that our present sufferings are not comparable to the glory that was revealed in us. 19th.
You're just repeating it now, Kurt.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is a verse. Okay. What?
Basically, it was creation awaits their eager expectation for the revelation of the sons of God to be revealed.
But see, I've always heard of that ever since I was a kid. I was always picturing that as being when you die and go to heaven and your reality is suddenly made evident. But I think this is talking about what he wants for us here and now.
I agree.
But it'll only happen if we observe his commandments. So if the first commandment is not a commandment, but a concept, I am Yahweh Eloheka. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. I'm the guy that just took you out of Egypt. Oh, okay. Thank you for identifying yourself. Only let's take away his name and hide it 7,000 times and never mention it again and make it illegal. The Jews have some kind of a law, apparently, from what I understand, that if you're a Jew and you mention his name, much less if you're a filthy goy infidel and mention his name, they can and should kill you. Kill you. Just like the Muslims say, if you talk smack against Muhammad, they can kill you. Same type of law. Well, if he said, I'm Yahweh, your Elohim, and you're not allowed to ever say those words, so let's change it. I'm the Lord your God. Not true. That's not what he said. He wants us to know his name. And if you go back and you look at all the times he mentioned his name in the book of Joel and Isaiah and Ezekiel, whoever calls on the name of Yahuwah will be saved. The name Yahuwah is a high tower. All who seek refuge there will find refuge in the name Yud He Vav He. And he starts off, Anoki Yahuwah, the first two words of Exodus 20 and of Deuteronomy 5, telling you the 10 Commandments. Why would he say that if it wasn't so? If the Christian church is all about truth, why do they perpetuate the obfuscation, the hiding of that fact? There's a great video, Cecil's Hallelujah, Cecils, Cecil's Hallelujah. I've played it for people often when I've gone places by a group called Cedar, the letter N, Sage, Cedar and Sage. You look at the video, they did a remake of Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah, changed some of the words, and then they show you pictures. And one of the pictures, they showed you these wonderful cathedrals and great, beautiful churches, and then they put up the words, why didn't you tell me he had a name? Why didn't you tell me he had a name? Part of the words also is that I searched and searched, and they show you these libraries and looking through thousands and thousands of ancient books, and I finally found the one place truth is to be had, Hebrew words of the Torah. The great library at Alexandria that was burned, the great cities that were destroyed in the world wars, millions and millions, Fahrenheit 451, millions and millions of books destroyed by various political regimes in order to hide the truth. And the one place that the real truth can be found, the Hebrew Torah, the Hebrew alphabet. If you know the 22 letters, you can figure out everything else out. That's the incredible thing. You don't even have to have the original document of how many pages? 1,000 pages? No. You know the 22 letters, everything else is determinable. But if you observe the commandments, so for the enemies of Israel to change the day from the 7th to the 1st, sure, they have a good logical reason. Jesus rose from the dead but he didn't, not on that day. He rode on the night of the 7th day, not the morning of the 1st day. But nevertheless, if you can get the people of Israel to throw away their secret weapon, the 7th-day Sabbath, to sit down and rest, no way, we don't need that. Woohoo, let's party, let's have sports, let's do anything but sit down and rest on the 7th day. The 7th day of rest is a tonic of recovery. Aleph Tav Nun, tonic of recovery. To take it away and say, look, we're meeting on the first day of the week here. This is like going to church on Sunday. It better not be. Oh, there's nothing wrong with going to church on Sunday. Go to church on Sunday. Have meetings with your friends. He just said the sacred Kadosh day of rest is the 7th, not the 1st. But here he said, observe the commandments, the Het Kuf. What are the Het Kuf? Okay, verse 3. Your eye, now here remember, Moshe's talking to 3 million people. The entire generation of those people's parents has just died in the wilderness for 40 years in the desert because they decided to believe that Yahweh just brought them out there to kill them. So what we said just before this call started was, I was having a conversation with a guy, bigger story, but we've discussed it before. Yahweh, our Elohim, will be or will play into whatever it is we choose to believe of him. If we choose to believe that these words are like the bird of paradise in the Garden of Eden, and the word Eden means delight and luxurious, voluptuous, if we choose to believe that that's the promise of the covenant, that it's all beauty and luxury, that's the word Eden, then that's who he will be. If we choose to believe that Yahweh or Elohim is our champion who puts us in a refuge of insurmountable protection. Nobody else can climb up the ladder. Only if Rapunzel throws her hair down and says, yeah, climb up and get me. Oh gosh, well, that's what our enemy wants us to do. Our enemy wants us to throw our beauty down to them so that they can crawl up and ravish us. And only if we do that can Israel ever be conquered and destroyed. If Israel stays safe in the protection of Yahuwah that he's provided, his chen, his encampment, his words, Israel cannot be ravished, dominated, the lower millstone to be pounded upon as the last word of what we were talking about in, what is it, Isaiah 40 or Isaiah 50 from last week. Anyway, countless verses go on to describe this scenario. Israel destroys itself for having a bad perspective of Yahuwah. If we believe that Yahuwah turns his back, and if we believe that our God is a man who gets killed, if that's our God, a man who gets killed and beaten up and won't protect himself, then the same thing's going to happen to us. I'm not denying that Yeshua is Mashiach, but what does that mean? And when Yahweh is our Elohim, who cannot be conquered, who cannot be overwhelmed. Remember, I gave you the story. I was doing work for a job for a guy many years ago, and he had it in his house someplace down in Hollywood, California. He had this thing. It almost looked kind of like a menorah as I think back. It wasn't a menorah, but it was under a glass dome. I was in there to do some house painting or something, and I looked at that and I go, wow, what's that? And he says, oh, that's an ancient artifact dug up in the Middle East. It's one of the gods of the Canaanites. And he said, those sneaky Jews, you know, they had a real tricky theology. See, the ancient Canaanites, they'd have their gods be symbolized by these gold and, you know, like a battle flag. If you're an army in war coming against another army and you have this battle flag, and if somebody captures your flag, oh no, they got our flag, and it was like this prize, and everybody else would run. You've defeated the other guys if you get their battle flag. If you captured the other Canaanite army, if you captured their God, they basically give up. It's like, well, okay, we've lost. And then it's like they'll just lay down their weapons and die because you've captured their God. So when the Israelites brought the Ark of the Covenant into the battle against the Philistines, and the Philistines go, oh no, we're done for now. The God of the Hebrews is with them. So they really fought like crazy, and they actually captured the Ark of the Covenant to their surprise. And it's like, oh gosh, because Yahweh is not a God in a box. He's not a relic. He's not a statue. He's not a man on a crucifix. That is not Yahuwah. And if we try to minimalize him like that, then we will get crucified. Yahweh, what this guy was saying is that those Hebrews had an invisible God that could never be captured, so they could never be overpowered. What a great concept. If your Elohim is so significant that he can never be overwhelmed, then if he's your Elohim, then you will never be overwhelmed. So if we look at Yahweh's words and say, he's going to provide us chen, our great warlord Khan will provide us his chen if we are his cheneni, hold the vision of that paradigm, that whole Garden of Eden in your mind, and somehow that's going to sustain us. Okay, back to verse 3. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did with Baal Peor. That was an alternative version of what they thought they were allowed to do. From what I believe, that was a whole orgy. Every man that followed Baal Peor, Yahweh your Elohim destroyed from your midst, but you who cling to Yahweh your Elohim, you are all alive today. He's basically saying, look, if you get the wrong picture and misappropriate the identity, the reality, the dynamics of the kingdom of your God, then Yahuwah is going to see to it that that's purged, and everybody who follows the wrong myth, the wrong picture, the wrong idol will be eliminated from his people. So every effort we're trying to do here is not invent a new religion or a new church, but we're trying to go back and find the core reality, the bones of the apparently long dead dinosaur, as it were. The reality, the bones, are these 22 letters and these words in Hebrew, and we're trying to hold on to that. We'll get into why, because it's explained in Deuteronomy 4 here. So, verse 5, see, I have taught you, but if you look at that word, I have taught, the first words of verse 5, it says, Lamed Mem Dalet Tav Yod, Lamad, Lamada T. Well, Tav Yod as an ending is both will have and I will. So which is it? In Hebrew, apparently there's two tenses. There's not past, present, and future. There's either the completed tense or the happening tense and the not having happened yet. Or so whether it's past or whether it's future, it's not now. So what I'm saying is that, do I need to wrap my mind around that grammatical context of how the Hebrew language works? It's basically saying, I have taught you, I will teach you, I am teaching you. It's just being in the act of the verb happening. So the idea is we need to teach each other and teach ourselves. The concept of lamad, lamed, lameding. So in the song, the alphabet song, lameding, so that from mem, a blessed noon restart. That's what this is about. If we lamed, if we are in the process of lameding, then from, mem is a prefix, literally is translated the word from. From what? It's from the lameding. So you can look back at the alphabetic sequence order here and say that because mem follows lamed, if we lamed, then mem is a birthplace, a gestation period of time, an incubation chamber from which comes the blossoming of the flower, the blessed noon, restarting. And so the restarting is that, listen, Yahweh's words are seeds of life, and the fact that they've laid dormant for a couple thousand years doesn't minimize or negate the life vitality potential within them. So to be taught the decrees and ordinances is the hetkuf and the mishpat. And you'll find numerous different translations: commandment, decree, ordinances, right rulings. It doesn't matter. Go back and you look. We've gone through this before. There's about a half a dozen words. There's het kuf, mem shin pe tet, mem zadi vav tav, tav ayin dalet, ayin vav dalet. Those are the witnesses, the testimonies, and then there's the Torot, tav vav resh tav. That's Torah made plural. It's basically all these same things. Just so you know, even though there's a half a dozen English words, which sounds very legalistic and very beyond you, it's not. It's a rung of the ladder that gets you up to balanced scales of equity. That's basically all this stuff is. Whatever you do is going to come back. That's the word fakad, pei kuf dalet. Just like the picture of the 10 talents, or he gave 5 to this guy and he got 5 more, which makes 10. He gave 3 to this one. He gave him 3 more. He gave 1 to this guy who buried it. He says, don't you really know how this works? Take that guy, beat him up, and make him pay it back. And it's like, it's the economy of the way Yahweh's kingdom works. Whatever we do will be measured back to us. Evil for evil, good for good. That's all this is. And then he says, look, if you do these 10 commandments, it will always come back to you with goodness multiplied. That's the only economy of the kingdom. Love Yahweh Elohim, and then he tells us how to do that. Love your neighbors yourself, and then he tells us how to do it. That's how the kingdom works. And everything he said has a germ of life within the seed. Even though it looks dormant, thousands of years dead, it's still viable. You plant the seed in your heart and sprouts the bird of paradise. Goes back to ayin zadi, or ayin pei zadi kuf. Right there at those letters, that's where we are. Yeshua resurrecting out of the grave, the 12 tribes coming back. See, I have taught you decrees and ordinances as Yahweh my Elohim has commanded me to do so in the midst of the land. You could say, well, we're not in the land yet. Or is the land the Kaf Lamed land of your heart? Metaphorically, to which you come to possess it. Verse 6, you shall safeguard, that's shomer, and perform, that's ayin shin hey, for it is your wisdom and discernment in the eyes of the people who shall hear all these decrees and who shall say, surely a wise and discerning people is this great nation. You want to pray for wisdom? Keep these words. What's discernment? Knowing how to determine and judge and decipher this from that, knowing how to see clearly so that it can discriminate. Regard these words. But if you look at them in English, Greek, and Latin, they'll throw you off. You got to go back and look at them in Hebrew. For what is a great nation that has a God who is close to it as Yahweh our Elohim whenever we call to him? But that word, whenever we call to him, is bet kaf lamed. We could say in the condition of all, every, each, any, bakal, like that famous actress Lauren Bacall. That word bakal is the same word here. And then the word to call is the word kra, kuf, resh, aleph, which also means learn to read. So I could say, does it say, Moshe is saying, listen, no other nation on the face of the earth has a God that they believe in, him, who's that close that whenever we call on him, boom, he's right there to answer. Or I could say, who actually lives up to every word and every letter of everything he said, if we learn how to read what he said and believe what he said and guard what he said. That's what he's talking about here. That's the word kuf resh aleph. So if you understand the language, you understand how to fit the context. And when it says bakal kranu, it's not just whenever we call on him, but it's also he'll do everything he said. And our job is to learn how to read and then expect him to. That's the upshot of this whole thing. And what is a great nation that has righteous decrees and ordinances such as, or similar to, is there anything like this entire Torah that I place to you this day? This is Deuteronomy 4, now verse 9. Only beware. Now this is Moshe's warning. Remember the book of Deuteronomy, he's been with his people for 40 years. Moshe is now 120 years old. Moshe was 40 years in Egypt, then 40 years out in the wilderness, then another 40 years. He was 120 years old. He's just about to disappear from his people, and he's giving them this last warning. Beware for yourself. The word for beware, I believe, is shomer. I'd have to go back and look here, verse 9. Actually, it says Zadik. No, wait a minute. Excuse me, wrong word. The rock is the word only. And yeah, shomer, hashamar. So the word to watch, keep, and guard is also the warning to beware of. Beware for yourself and greatly beware. That's typically shomar, shamar. For your soul, not only beware for yourself in physical, spiritual, but also even for your mind, your soul, lest you forget the things that your eyes have beheld, unless you remove them from your heart all the days of your life and make them known to your children and your children's children. If you remove them from your heart, you're taking the lamed out of the mem. It's not going to noon, and you better teach them to your children and grandchildren, or else your enemies will take advantage of the void and overwhelm you and take you into captivity, which is what's happened. Verse 10, the day that you stood before Yahweh your Elohim at Horeb, when Yahweh said to me, that's also, Horeb is another word for Mount Sinai, but as we said, the word Sinai means erudite scholarship. So what they also call it Horeb, that's a different matter. I'd have to look at the word for Horeb. Chet resh bet is the word for sword or knife or devastation. I'd have to see how the way that's spelled. Anyway, here, let me go on. Interest of time here. Gather the people to me, and I shall let them hear my words, so that they shall learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and they shall teach their children. Hear my words, learn to have a regard, a fear, a reverence for me all the days they live on the earth. This is about the earth. This isn't about, so they can go to heaven when they die. This is about us walking out our days on the planet, on earth. That's what Yahweh's concern is. It's not about, I've got this great place prepared for you when you die. You can come up here and be with me. His concerns all through the Old Testament, like Sally was saying there, that he was bringing the Mishkan. The word Mishkan means the place of neighborly dwelling together. He brought it down to the earth and told Moshe to build it on the earth. There's this focus of attention on the earth, the here and now, in this Torah, which is not really what I learned as the push of the Christian message. That was all go to heaven when you die with your sins forgiven. Teach their children. He keeps mentioning teach, 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 teach. That's Yahweh's hang up, not mine. Verse 11 of Deuteronomy 4. So you approached, this is Moshe talking to the people and giving them a history lesson. You approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain was burning with fire up to the heart of heaven, darkness, cloud, and thick cloud. Yahweh spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You were hearing the sound of words, but you were not seeing a likeness, only a sound. Okay, so this is a very critical thing that he mentions numerous times in this chapter. You heard the sound of words, no likeness, no image, no form, no anything, words. He told you, again, words, of his covenant that he commanded you to observe the 10 declarations. See, here they don't call them commandments, they call them declarations or matters, or Devarim, 10 Devarim, like the book of Deuteronomy is called Devarim. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets. Verse 14, Deuteronomy 4, Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you decrees and ordinances. Again, chok and mishpat, that you shall perform them in the land to which you cross to possess it. The word cross is also the word Eber or Hebrew. It means to cross over. But you shall greatly beware for your souls. Again, that word is shomer. It's a warning, like flashing lights. Warning, warning, warning. You did not see any likeness on the day Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make for yourselves a carved image, a likeness of any shape, a form of a male or female. Wow, right there, it kind of blows the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus right out of the doors. No likeness, no Virgin Mary, no baby Jesus. Verse 17, a form of any animal that is on the earth, a form of any winged bird that flies in the heaven, a form of anything that creeps on the ground, a form of any fish that is in the water under the earth. And lest you raise your eyes to the heaven, oh, it's not on earth, let's look to the heavens, to the stars, and you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, the entire legion of heaven, and you be drawn away and bow to them and worship them, which Yahweh your Elohim has apportioned to all the peoples under the entire heaven. What does that mean? We could say, listen, Yahweh has put it into the hearts of man to look for idols, look for powers, look for source that they can bow to. We don't bow to the things anymore. We don't do that. But what does that mean? Incline, to seek after, to try to get into. Whatever that word bow, it literally means to fall prostrate to, but we might have other mechanisms of doing it. And Yahweh says, listen, I put a bug in the heart of, you might say, the software of the standard human to profane himself, to always go after these things which will destroy them. But to you, Israel, to you, I'm giving you my words, don't do that. And if you want to be Israel, don't do that. But Yahweh has taken you and withdrawn you from the iron crucible from Egypt. You could say the word Egypt is actually the word Mitzrayim, is between a rock and a hard place, like two grinding millstones, which just churning constantly on the mind, on the body, on the being of those who are not Yahweh's people, that constantly be stressed and aggravated and crushed and tormented. But he says he's withdrawn. I'm physically saying that's what the word Mitzrayim means, to be between a rock and a hard place. Zadi Resh, Zarim. And he is our rock. He is our Mitzar. He's our Zadi Resh, is fortress, high tower of strength, Migdal. I'm just saying, if you look into these Hebrew words, you'll see always this positive connotation and the negative connotation. And the more you study as you meditate it, you'll see these things are clearly evident. So Yahuwah chose Israel, pulled them out of that churning oppression between the millstones, and he says, I've given you my words. And if you make an image of any kind and go back under that form, you will become like that form. So don't have any form. No baby Jesus, no Virgin Mary, no Jesus on the cross. Don't do it. No lion, no lamb, no winged snake. But Yahweh has taken you and withdrawn you from the iron crucible from Egypt to be a nation of heritage for him as this very day. That word heritage also means possession and acquisition. So for this person I was talking to say all religions are the same. Well, maybe so, but then you have no clue and don't understand these words, because this religion is unlike every other religion. This thinking is unlike every other way of thinking. This nation is unlike any other nation. This being Yahuwah's people is unlike being any other people. And if you stop to compare it to any people, you've lost it. You're wrong. If you compare it to an image, you're wrong. You've just thrown it away. You've lost it, and you've subjected yourself to be crushed between the millstones. Verse 21, Yahweh became angry with me because of your deeds. That's where Moshe is still not quite, at least the way it reads in English, not quite fessing up to the fact that he played into his attitude because the people aggravated him. And it happens to all of us. As I said, it happened to me. It happens to me from time to time. He swore that I would not cross the Jordan and not come to the good land that Yahweh your Elohim gives you as a heritage. So here we are Yahuwah's heritage, and he gives us the land as our heritage. Okay, well, what are we still doing out here scattered across the face of the earth? He hasn't brought it back yet. Verse 22, for Moshe saying, I'm going to die in this land. Somebody has something to say? Como Berenices? Did somebody have something they want to say?
There's just the Como Berenices, the image of the baby Jesus on the lap of Mary.
Ah, okay.
Coming from the constellations, the idols.
Well, you could see it in the constellations as pictorial images, just like the letters are pictures, but that doesn't mean that's the evil thing. To bow to them, to yield to them, there's more to this. I'm trying to get to the Ten Commandments as fast as I can here. Verse 23 of Deuteronomy 4, beware for yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim that he has sealed with you, and you make for yourselves a carved image, a likeness of anything, as Yahweh your Elohim has commanded you. See, he keeps saying this stuff again and again and again. He's the guy with the hang-up. So when he says something more than once, especially half a dozen times or a dozen times, realize that he's really serious about this. For Yahweh your Elohim, he is a consuming fire, a El Kona, Aleph Lamed, Kuf Nun Aleph. El Kona, consuming fire. And again, that's why this shirt with the flames on it is just a reference of what he's talking about. It's like he uses fire as an image. So are we allowed to have fire? Is that, well, plasma is not an object. So it's okay to have fire as a reference of who our Elohim is? I mean, if solid liquid gas is objectified, is plasma objectified? Not really, but are we doing the same thing, having an image of fire as an image of a lion or a lamb or a bird of paradise flower?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to shut this off and start again in a minute. But so the end of 15, it says sorry, the end of 20.
Verse 15?
No, 420.
End of verse
420. It says, "No, you Adonai has taken and brought." I don't know, this is how it says in my interpretation, which is the complete Jewish Bible, out of the smelting furnace out of Egypt. And then the end of 24, it says Adonai is a consuming fire, a jealous God. And if you think about a smelting furnace, that's how you create metal, and you shape and form metal. And though Egypt may have been a bad thing, that's where he made them strong. That's where he forged them in the fire, and then he is a consuming fire, and he's making us strong again. So even though we're out here in the diaspora, it's an opportunity to get stronger and learn, because it's going to get really bad.
Listen, you're making an absolutely great point there. And it's not just that he did it back then, but it happened to Joseph in the dungeon. It happened to Moshe in the 40 years as a shepherd in the wilderness with Yithro, and it happened with Yeshua in the grave, and it's happened for the last 2,730 years with the 12 tribes, or at least the northern 10 tribes of Israel, scattered across the face of the earth. We're not sitting here dormant doing nothing. It has been.
Well, no, like we read in Isaiah 50 last week, and I was just, as I was editing the video, watch this thing for 2 days, I'm thinking that who's being spoken to, and it seems to me that Isaiah is saying, go ahead and do your, because he's not liked. He's a prophet. He's not showing up and everybody's like, oh, yay, Uncle Isaiah's here. He's bringing bad news to people and saying, hey, you got to change your ways. And then they're coming against him. And he's saying, do your worst. Come on. You have no idea who's backing me. You really don't. So I feel like as the nations start to rise up again, I see the re-rising of the Third Reich, only it's not just Germany. I think that was a test to see if it could be done, and they're trying to poison everybody, that we remember who our Adonai is, who our Yahuwah is. Like, do your worst, try it, see what you got, because who's backing us?
If you, the more you know about history, the more you realize they've lied to us about history. The point is, whatever was going on in the 1940s with Germany, the Third Reich, that whole thing was just one piece of a much bigger thing going on, you might say. The whole Merovingian order and why they did that, why the same people funded both sides. It's like the same guy owns two football teams, one in the National League, one in the American League, and he wants to see them fight in the Super Bowl and see which one's better. The same guys were funding both sides to see, would fascism or capitalism win, or communism, or what the heck? I mean, something different was going on than what they ever told us. But Yahweh allowed it. Maybe even he facilitated it. The point is, how do we be as people? It's not to play in to their regime, their paradigm. Yahweh gives us warning all through Deuteronomy 4 here. No likeness, no image. And you better listen and guard these words. He says it repeatedly. Okay, so did you want to stop? And are you?
Yep.
Are you,
Yeah, no, I'll stop and then start again.